On October 7th, I went out to look at a trail camera I have. I got a 16 gigabyte memory card in it that I pulled out, and I discovered it was completely full with 63 90-second videos. And this was over a 10-day period. So I come back and looked at them, and I had 45 videos that I pulled off of, and I edited a lot of the dead space out to try and shorten up as much as possible. But you see a lot of things like this little spike buck in here rubbing on his trees, and this is typical of a deer just prior to what they consider the rut, when the does come in estrus. So the bucks are also scraping the velvet off their antlers and marking scent spots, and like basically marking posts to show does, stuff that they're around, and other deer that they're in the area. In this particular, out of the 10-day period that this covered, this is day one. This is September 23rd, around 7:27 in the evening. The sun had just gone down, so my camera at nighttime takes black and white using infrared. In the daytime, you'll get a color video. Alright, for anyone that wonders what a deer rub is, or has never seen one before, this will give you a little bit of idea what the deer in the videos are doing. They're actually rubbing their antlers, peeling the bark right off the trees, as you can see here. And that one little spike that you see coming in there, he was rubbing on this sapling. And we got another one over here. You see where they've peeled the bark right off it. And over next to me, they worked on this tree here. This tree had been rubbed several years in a row. So apparently this has become a favorite place for them. Now as I swing around, I'll get up. This is where the camera is. I can find it in the... That's what the deer are staring at. Now what happens at nighttime, this is taking video of me right now, but at nighttime all those little LEDs you see there go into infrared mode, and they glow red. They don't shine out a big spotlight, but they just glow red. And that's what catches the deer's attention, and you'll see them in the video. They're kind of staring at it, trying to figure out what's going on. And this is what the camera is a spy point. Their model HD7, which is high definition. There's actually another rub on a tree back in the woods further. I might be able to go back and find that. But apparently they've been traveling this area through the woods here, this path, and making rubs along the way. Now we're only about 40-50 feet from where the camera's set up, and this tree was really rubbed on last year, but doesn't seem to be hit too much this year. But just as I walked up here, I looked off to my left, and lo and behold, they've been in here rubbing on this tree, and this is fresh this year. I get a thing in focus here. So, they like this area. Now you know what deer rubs are. Now we're 3 hours later after that spike buck was in there, and we got this 8-point that showed up. He's coming in there, he's hitting the same trees, wants to make sure his presence known. You see he comes up, and all of a sudden he stops and he's staring. Well, this is what he's staring at. That's the camera at nighttime, uh, and this is the same camera I got up within 3 feet of, and that's what he's looking at. So he's a little nervous. He's trying to wonder what it is. He knows something's not there, or something's there that shouldn't be there. So they kind of get the deer in the headlight scenario. Guess he's looking to make sure something's not going to move, or so he just cautiously, creeps up there and then wanders on by. And then 5 hours later, this 4-point, he shows up. Actually, that's 5 minutes later. So that 8-point buck may have spotted him off in back behind the camera also. There's that 8-point back. That's what was making him nervous. You don't want to have nothing to do with that 8-point. It's the time of year that the bucks are getting dominant. Or trying to declare their dominance. Now we're going to move into day 2, the 10-day event. This is 10.5 hours later. And there's that 4-point. Could be the same one. Actually, you'll see there's what appears to be 2 different 4-points. One of them has a little nub on one side of his antlers that could possibly be another point. Now, 5 hours later, this is what they call a button buck. Actually, it's a fawn. It's only about 5 months old, maybe 6 months old. And he'll be back several times. When he gets up in front of the camera, you can see the little bumps on his forehead. An hour, 4.5 hours later, this is a very good mature doe. She's in there smelling all, and she sees that camera also. But she's smelling where all them bucks have been leaving scent. It's probably a good 4.5, 5.5-year-old doe. She moves out. 5 minutes later, she's back. Now we'll head into day 3, just 4 hours later. There's this 4-point buck again. And you'll see, I'll point out when the other one shows up, it looks just a little bit different. And 2 hours later, this doe is back again. Just see her legs. She's just standing off there at the edge, but she'll turn and walk in front of us. Now 3.5 hours after this, that four-point buck, he returns. And 4 hours later, there's this guy is kind of a weird thing. Now you look at it, the left side of his rack, it looks fully developed, but the right side is just a spike sticking up. That could possibly be an indication that he'd been injured in the past. And typically, from what all the biologists say, when you got a deformed rack on the right side of his head, he's had an injury on the left side of his body, possibly rear quarter or something like that. Well, he moves over to the right a little bit, and you can see his head up in the tree branches, and he's probably leaving scent off his scent glands up in the trees there. Typically what they're doing that, and they'll paw at the ground, and that's what they call making a scrape. You know, urinate in it, and basically it's another way of marking their territory. This is probably about a 3.5-year-old deer. And there's got 5 hens come by an hour and a half later. There's one. She's leading the rest. They'll show up here in a second. We're still in day 3. There comes the other ones. After these hen turkeys walk by, it isn't 15 minutes, and we have the doe come back in again. And 8 hours later, the turkeys come back. Looks like we got 8 of them this time. Yeah, 3 hours after the turkeys leave. Here's this 4-point buck again. walks off, and 3 hours later shows back up again. So he's making his rounds. That or this could be another 4-point. There's a spike. He finally shows back up 2 hours later. Seems to be showing up about the same time. You know, here's 7:30 in the evening. When we first saw him, he was at 7:27 in the evening. And an hour later, there's the doe. It could be the doe, or actually it could be that button buck that we'd seen earlier. It's hard to tell at night like this. Now we're going to move into day 4. And we got a little bunny rabbit there. So we got things other than deer, which I'm actually, when you see what shows up later on, I'm surprised we got any rabbits out here. Now this is either a 4 or a 6-point. Very hard to tell. And 8 hours later, there's a 4-point again. And 6 hours later, shows up again. Then an hour after this, we got the doe come back. Now we're going to move into day 5. And here's this little button buck. When he gets up close to the camera, you can see there's some small white spots still showing. He hasn't lost all his spots yet, so he's probably 5 to 6 months old at the best. You use it kind of around the hind quarter. You can see some remnants of the spotted hair. I don't know whether he's twitching from there. You see on his rear quarter all the little dots there. I don't know he's twitching from nervousness or the ticks are getting him. This is day 5. And about 6.5 hours later, we got this 4-point shows up again. And here comes the doe. We're into day 6 now. And 6 hours later, here comes this little button buck again. 4-point shows back up. There must be some other deer close in the area. He's being very alert. There could also be some cattle in the area. Occasionally I do see cows wander through this area. And he'll disappear for an hour and then he'll be back again. This guy's probably about 1.5 years old. Now this next clip gets interesting because we got a whole new deer. And that's a 10-point that shows up. I'll show you a little still. There you can count all the points on him. And he only showed up this one time. And then we got this panther. This is the following day, and this was kind of a surprise. Hadn't seen one of those before, and that's a Florida Panther. It looks like a young one. He lays down, he or she, I can't tell which it is. He's not there very long, and then you can see it start to get up. You can see the tail kind of pop out, and you can see the black tip on the tail. And the shape of the head is definitely not a bobcat. That's the profile of a Florida Panther. It'll start to get up. You can see the tail there, it pops out, you can see that black tip on it. And off it goes. Interesting, just an hour later, here comes this 4-point again. This could be either a doe or that button buck again. We're in day 7 now. And this is that 4-point. Now we're going to go into day 8, and we're 18 hours later, and we get this lone hen, turkey, just wanders by all by herself. And then about 2 hours later, a little button buck shows up again. Probably looking for his mama. does start coming into estrus, they'll abandon their young ones like this. This is probably the first time he's been alone in his life, so everything's new to him. And then half hour later, you get this turkey coming back again. Now we're going to day 9. 12 hours later, and there's this 4-point buck again. He's still rubbing on those trees. He picked a different one this time. Wanting to make their presence known. All the velvet's been rubbed off their antlers by now, and basically what they're doing is just leaving scent markings. And as he leaves, it gets quiet for the next 10 hours. Then we get a couple of hen turkeys coming by. Then an hour later, you see him come back. And it's barely 10 minutes later, and this little button buck shows up again. And he steps out of view of the camera for just a few seconds here, but he turns and comes back around. There he is again. You can see the little bumps on his forehead. Now the next two clips we're going to see is 10 hours later, that spike that we saw in the very first video clip. He shows back up again in the evening, and then he shows back up again the following morning, about 9 hours later. So I hope you've found this interesting. Nobody has ever seen a rub before. Now you've seen one, know what they are and how they make them. Now before I leave this whole series, you'll see I go out and I have a can of scent spray, and those little short pine sap that you can see kind of growing right there in the front. I cut those down and laid them down in front of the camera, and I sprayed them with this scent. And what I got here, I kicked some of these little pine saps over here. And I got this stuff called ambush. Basically, it's a scent. I'm going to spray it on these pine, and hopefully, we're right in front of the camera, and some videos coming up, we will see them come right over here and smelling this.